Well, I do a lot of work with George Carey's work,
Mhm.
and he was an astrologer and alchemist,
Mm.
and he discovered that the 12 tissue salts that Schussler discovered, the German physician in the late 1800s,
Yeah.
he was studying the cremated remains of humans and animals,
Mhm.
and then studied the remains, because he wanted to
Okay.
know what are we made of. Well, it turns out 12 tissue salts. So George Carey being an astrologer, and whom I based a lot of my work on it, and I'm sharing this with you because if you're not aware of this part of my work, this has been so rewarding
Mhm.
for me to go into this field, because I've seen directly how the tissue salts astrologically have affected me and many, countless thousands of people who have watched those videos
I
and
love
gone
that.
out and got the 12 salts.
Wow.
And I'll show you where I put your work from your book into my graphics,
Mm,
and how you have helped me and syncretism and many, many people. So
Let me ask you, have you found that the 12 tissues, me and Matthew Wood, the great herbalist, have been debating this, because do you find that the 12 tissue salts are rightly assigned to the 12 signs?
absolutely, but remember that they might be assigned primarily to one sign.
Mhm.
Like I see iron phosphate assigned to your sign.
Right. I mean,
Right.
why?
But hang on, you'd think, well, hang on, what about Aries being
Aries,
all of
yeah,
iron?
yeah,
Why
yeah.
does it get potassium phosphate?
Right.
Well, George Carey, he and Inez Perez,
Mhm.
his female co-author, and probably the brains behind all of the astrological part of it, they got it right.
Mm.
They got it right. In all my ways of approaching, because I've had thousands of people in the last decade coming back to me with alternative. Remember, whatever you assign a planet to, like Mars is the ruler of onions,
Mhm.
but so is Venus for moisture. Mars is for heat.
Okay.
Okay, hot and dry.
Yeah.
So Mars gives that heat to the onion, but it's nice and moist, isn't it?
Mm.
Well, then a co-ruler, Venus, steps in to provide the humour, which
Mm.
Mars, because there are only four humours, yeah, cold and hot, two positive, moist and dry,
Right.
two negatives. So the same is with the salts. So starting from Aries,
Mhm.
going all the way through to Pisces, your sign, you've got potassium phosphate, Aries, Taurus, sodium sulfate, Gemini, potassium chloride, Cancer, calcium fluoride.
Fluoride, yeah.
Calcium fluoride, good for the teeth,
Mhm.
sodium fluoride,
Mm.
bad for the teeth.
Okay.
It's the wrong combination.
Yeah.
Leo, magnesium phosphate.
Heart.
Yeah, the heart, magnesium, to settle the heart and keep
Mhm, mhm.
magnetism in the blood.
Yeah.
You see, you got it right. Virgo, potassium sulfate. And I can tell you why the potassium with the sulfate works for
Mhm.
Virgo, because it's the digestive system.
Yeah.
Sulfur,
Mm,
okay, and potassium. Libra, sodium chloride.
mm,
Sodium phosphate.
Mm.
Now here's something interesting. I'll stop there and then I'll do the rest.
Yeah.
Went to a naturopath, family naturopath, about 2 years ago. My mother took me. She said, let's go to Don. Been going since we were knee high. Mum was always into health and, no sugar, brown bread. Everything was really, that's where I got most of it from, good parents, So we went to see Don, and he's still a Jehovah's Witness. Good on him. Knows nothing about astrology, which is from the devil. Anyway, he looks into my eyes. He goes, oh, Sam. He called me Sam. Yeah, my family called me Sammy, Sam. Not Santo, but yeah, that's cool. Sammy, he says, your kidney. It's one of your kidneys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you sodium phosphate. And I thought, well, there you go. I know, studying George Carey and being an astrologer, that sodium phosphate is for Libra for the kidneys. And he said, this will support your kidneys. So I had Mum there. Didn't say anything to him. Not going to bother. Yeah. Maybe I should have. But as we walked out, I said, Mum, pulled up my computer. Said, see this zinc rotor here? You see the salt, the tissue salt that he gave me? You see where it is there? It's for Libra, sodium phosphate. He knows nothing about astrology. But see, this is how astrology knows everything. And we are yet to know these things. Here's another one. George Carey discovered that each one of us is weak in either three or more signs
The
due...
sun, the moon, the south node.
No, that's a different thing.
Oh,
But,
different
so you're born in Pisces. You had a 9-month gestation period, we'll assume. So you pop out of your mother's womb, it's Pisces. You don't have time to go back and get the nutrients from the placenta and from your mother's
Right.
body
Yeah.
to get enough iron phosphate. All Pisceans are deficient in iron phosphate. And George Carey administered that salt and the next two. So yours, next one would be potassium phosphate for Aries,
Okay.
and then sodium sulfate for Taurus, and that's your cornerstone. All Pisceans, he would just administer those three to the Pisceans. Next sign, Aries, give them their three. Next sign, Taurus, send them away. All their symptoms disappeared.
So you give the first the birth month and the two after.
Yes.
Why the two after?
Well, because you see, you've developed 9 in your mother's womb.
Oh, I see.
If we're not astrologers anymore and we've forgotten the way of
Oh, I
God
get
and
it.
nature,
Yes.
we're not going to be giving those particular salts to the
That's a
individual.
nice tip.
Right. So, one day, about 2 years ago, up in Queensland, where I was living, I went to a woman I was recommended to go. She has a SCIO machine, SCIO.
Okay.
These days, there are a lot of machines that are magnetic and electrical in nature, where they put a terminal around your wrist.
Yeah.
In this case, there were 5 terminals, 1 around my head, 2 here, and 2 around my
Wired
shins.
up.
Yeah. And the computer just runs a program on you, reads what's weak and if you've got a bad heart, circulation, etc., everything. But the SCIO machine happens to pick up the tissue salts. And guess what she found? Now, I'm Aries,
Yeah.
so I always take iron phosphate for Aries, sodium sulfate for Taurus, potassium chloride for Gemini. And then I've got a few other weaknesses in Virgo, so I'll take that salt. There's a few oppositions and bad planets in there, retrograde, Uranus and Pluto in Virgo, so that's really tumultuous in the lower intestinal part for me, and overheated. But when you know how to read astrology and you read people's charts, you know how to say, well, look, maybe you might want to also take the salt for Leo because your heart and whatever. All right. So this machine picked up that my number one weakness was potassium phosphate, didn't it? And I'm looking at her. I'm looking at I forget her name. I said,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
okay, all right. And
I
said,
always
what are
like
the
that.
other ones? Potassium chloride, Gemini.
Wow, within your same birth.
They were, of all the 12 salts, they were the ones that the Skyo machine picked up that I was weak on.
So she corroborated that.
Thank you, George Carey.
Yeah.
So he did get them right.
Wow.
I'm Aryan, I'm deficient in potassium phosphate. The machine, a magnetic electromagnetic machine, picked that up.
See this?
Now the third
you
one.
can do this with a lot of people and prove astrology works right there.
Yeah. Now the third one, it didn't pick up my Taurus. It must have been strong. I think it was like, I asked her, I think it was like about fifth.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the third one was Pisces, iron phosphate.
Oh.
And I know why. I know why, because I have a debility there.
Oh.
So you see, I walked out of there just feeling really
That's
rewarded and thinking, man, oh man, not only are these people, thousands writing back to me saying, Santos, I just started on the cell salts and I've changed my life around, right? I walked out of there saying, well, there's a machine, there is technology confirming that this is true science. It knows your deficiencies. And that's what I'm doing when I'm reading a chart, a medical chart, and I use Judith's degrees as well. Let me get that now, because what I do, you can easily pick up if someone's struggling medically.